Welcome everyone to this webinar sponsored by the NCAPA team in our series entitled Rivers, Dams, and Climate Change, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. My name is Halsey Snow. I'm a semi-retired business owner, educator, and a never-retired environmentalist, and a member of the Sierra Club and the NCAPA Steering Committee. NCAPA is a grassroots organization of the Sierra Club. And our mission, it's a nonprofit, volunteer-led organization working to build a movement against the greenwashing of megadams while promoting clean energy, scientific truth, and climate justice. And I just want to acknowledge, before we go any further, that we live and work on the ancestral lands of the Wabanaki people, who still inhabit these lands from Newfoundland, Quebec, and Maine. So today, we're going to have a presentation by Cliff Krolik, who is also a member of the NCAPA Steering Committee. Cliff has a degree in clinical psychology from Ohio State University, an environmental education certificate from Tufts University in Boston. He was a mason and general contractor for 14 years. And for the last 30 years, he's been a manager and founder of Backcountry Excursions of Maine. He's been a member of the Sierra Club for 14 years and a member of NCAPA for 6 years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cliff, and we will start with the slideshow.
Okay, good to have everybody here. Most of the largest dams in the Northern Hemisphere's subarctic region are impounded and are no longer flowing year-round. Damming of the Earth's major rivers has destroyed the natural water cycle, replacing it with a human-regulated cycle, which has led to serious unintended consequences for our water and atmospheric circulation systems. A strong synergy exists between land, rivers, oceans, and atmospheres. Interrupting this synergy can result in starvation of marine life, such as diatoms, which prevent critical CO2 sequestration. Historically, hydroelectricity damming first only portions of the river was seen as an easy way to generate energy that could power modern time conveniences. Thinking that it was renewable and problem-free, the thirst for greater amounts of hydroelectric, particularly in North America and Europe, grew. As time went on, dams and reservoirs grew much larger and eventually completely trapped entire rivers to be under total human regulation for the sole purpose of maximizing energy generation. Keep in mind that throughout this time, little, if any, at all, environmental assessment of damming entire rivers was made. From the 1940s and 50s, the number of very large mega dams, fully impounded rivers increased. In 1950, the Soviets and their scientists announced to the world that they found a way to change the weather in Siberia. Normally a cold and dry climate, scientists discovered a way to make Siberia climate slowly warmer and wetter. This was by damming and impounding their major rivers, creating sea-sized reservoirs, covering over all kinds of flora, including permafrost ground. Slide 3. If you look up on the maps in front of you, we have both Siberia here in red, all those lines are the rivers, or should I say former rivers. And there are many rivers in northern Quebec as well as Manitoba. These are what we call hotspots. And if you look at slide 4, these green spots across Canada are all large dams all through Canada. So the hotspots are really problematic for the Northern Hemisphere. And if you look and point over there, Halsey, to the Labrador and Northern Quebec, you'll see the James Bay water projects on the La Grande River, Quebec, account for 16 dams and 77 diversions. This is just 2 river systems. In Manitoba, to the west, the Nelson River large water diversion, part of the Hudson Bay water projects.
Here.
The largest water diversion, the Canipiascayo Reservoir for the La Grande River water projects, encompasses a 1,650 square mile reservoir, including parts of the St. Lawrence River watershed. There's also to the west BC hydro projects on the Peace River, Bridge River, Pen d'Oriel River, and these are all reservoir impounded rivers. Churchill Falls in Manitoba, the Nelson River area, encompasses 2,698 square miles of watershed. Now, if you look over to Siberia on that map, you'll notice that there are major watersheds on the Kola Peninsula, up on the far left there, and also the Kola Peninsula, those waters coming off of those dammed rivers go right into the Barents and Kara Seas. Further west, the ex-Volga River. To the east, impounded rivers are at large. There's a number of them, the Ob, the Yenisei, Vilyuy, Irtysh, and Angara. With many of the Siberian rivers, as is the case with the Canadian rivers, they're now just sea-sized impounded reservoirs. No longer do they serve as a vital distribution system of nutrients to marine life in the nearby ocean and North Atlantic and Pacific Oceans on both coasts. Slide 6. This is an example. The dam on the picture on the left is an example of one of the hydroelectric dams in Siberia. This is the Sanyo-Shushenskaya Dam in Siberia, standing 752 feet tall and encompassing 500 square mile reservoir. Now keep in mind that this river is no longer a river. These are examples of complete river damming with strict flow regulation and really crippling effects on the rivers. This holds true for all large dams in the subarctic. Waters, if you look at slide 7, this is a cross section right here. Waters leave the reservoir via the penstock tubes all winter long. Now the penstock is located below the freeze line in winter. So it's well below the ice and approximately 75 to 100 feet below. Waters leave the reservoir via the penstock tubes all winter. Here, water is 40 degrees or greater. The integrity, biodiversity, and ecological consistency of the river system is dismantled. Warmer waters flow down the penstock through the tubes and then discharged into severe Arctic winter. Here, it is immediately transformed from a liquid form into a gas, water vapor. According to NASA, water vapor is a greenhouse gas, and it intensifies the greenhouse effect. Impounded reservoir water is chemically changed, stagnant, and stuck behind dams throughout the warm weather months. Water loses oxygen and significant amounts of silica and other organic nutrient compounds. Deep below, behind these dams, it's a low oxygen and anaerobic environment, perfect for creating methane gas and methylmercury, which is a neurotoxin. Methylmercury happens to make water and fish unsafe for human consumption. For decades, this dam model has been and it still is forcing multiple pathways of heat pollution, heating water, atmosphere, and land areas. Number 8, please. Here is another example. Number 9, please. Here is another example of highly regulated, human-regulated flow. This is the Daniel Johnson Dam in Quebec. Stands 703 feet tall. Keep in mind that there's very little flow in summertime. If you look carefully at the middle of the dam, there's some water flowing out, and that's the river flow in the summer. Hydroelectric is generated only in the dead of winter. This region, subarctic, is extremely sensitive to any changes in historic wintertime flows. They've always remained small because of ice and freeze. However, with the commissioning of large dams starting in the 50s, just the opposite is occurring. Now human-regulated flow is forcing 10 to 20 times greater volumes of fresh water, warmer fresh water, to flow through turbines downstream, unfrozen for almost 200 miles at all these hydroelectric stations, all winter during the severe Arctic cold. The forcing of heavy river flow in winter is completely the opposite to the yearly average flow. This is exactly the time and season when most marine life reduced their food consumption and hibernation. This is like watering your garden in the winter when the ground is frozen, and historically the subarctic rivers were frozen, not flowing. Keep in mind that forcing the water out in the dead of winter, any nutrients are barely going to be touched by marine life because they're in a state of semi-hibernation. In addition, Arctic sea ice along the continental shelves used to freeze every winter. However, with the large inundations of warm freshwater discharges, which have been going on for close to 70 years now, the temperature of the water has been increasing. This is preventing sea ice along the shelves from refreezing during winter, as it once did. In addition, this wintertime increase of fresh water has weakened the currents responsible for maintaining our climate. The larger volumes of water, fresh water in winter, interacts and leads to the layering of fresh and salt water. This has weakened the thermohaline and the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, and now encourages warm water from the Gulf Stream to invade the northern waters in wintertime. Slide 10, please. Yep, slide 10. We have a picture here and a map of, we've got northern Canada, Quebec, and Greenland up there, if you look carefully. And to the right, we have
Just a minute, Roger.
city of Krasnoyarsk, Siberia,
I'll
on
say
the
one.
Yenisei River. Wintertime sea smoke on the Yenisei River, you notice it there? In the winter, sea smoke from a river that's supposed to be frozen is heated water vapor heading downstream from Krasnoyarsk hydroelectric station. This showing how the heated water vapor warms the region throughout the winter. Now, the predominant southwesterly winds are blowing massive amounts of water vapor from Quebec's La Grande River projects and the Western Nelson River projects directly. And you can see, if you look at the map, Halsey's got the pointer there, you can see the predominant wind direction blows all the way up toward Greenland. Now, carefully look, these numbers on Greenland, 4, 5, and 6, those are readings taken at weather station. The readings taken here at the southern end of Greenland have recorded increases in humidity, precipitation, and temperature levels out of the normal historical ranges. Since 1993, it was noticed there was a tipping point in Greenland where Greenland became wetter and warmer, and warmer waters began to flow down the East Coast, affecting fisheries, etc. Again, keep in mind that picture. That is heated water coming from deep behind the dams. And if you look up in the sky there, it seems kind of opaque. Well, that's what water vapor does, according to NASA. Greenhouse gas emissions occur when 40-degree water hits air temperatures of 0 or below. The heat differential creates a greenhouse gas known as water vapor. Historically, subarctic rivers were frozen the entire winter. Now, however, and this has been going on for at least 50 to 60 years, the stagnant waters in the summertime continue to heat reservoir waters, melting large quantities of permafrost and around the sea-sized impoundments, heating them. In winter,
Could you just stop a moment? Can everybody see the slide?
Yes, I can see it. The slide's good.
Okay,
Yes, I can see it. Thank you.
great. Okay.
in wintertime, precisely the wrong time of year, larger volumes of warmer water from the dams are flooding into the Arctic Ocean. This slow accumulation of warmer waters of a degree or so over decades is now preventing Arctic sea ice near the continental, along the continental shelves from refreezing during winter. And this is also leading to more melting of the poles. If storms can travel across the US 3,000 miles in 3 days, there's no reason why the water vapor over northern Canada around Hudson's Bay from all that intense damming can't make it up to Greenland to keep heating it. All right. Slide 12, please. And feel free to go back between 13 and 14 while I'm talking. Diatoms, a form of phytoplankton with silica shells, contribute 40% of marine productivity. Phytoplankton diatom populations have been decreasing 1% per year. Keep that in mind. If you look at this cross-section of the ocean, we're seeing these sort of blobs. They like to drift on the surface. These are all diatoms, phytoplankton.
Just a second. Thanks.
Got that slide up?
Yep.
So diatoms, they're single cell organisms, and they like to kind of hang out in colonies together. They're drifting nearly invisible at the top layer of the ocean. Diatoms are thought to produce at least 40% of the food, the organic carbon, made by photosynthesis on the Earth each year. The presence and success of phytoplankton determine the biological characteristics of the region. And this can be found on what NASA calls their dwindling diatom studies. Diatoms, again, are single-cell organisms, are the most important foundation part of the marine food chain. In a moment, you'll know why, and are one of nature's most powerful biological mechanisms for cooling the planet. The high fatty acid content of diatoms, up to 25% of their dry weight, promotes high growth, survival, and reproductive rates in marine and freshwater ecosystems. This study was done by Mangas and Sanchez and Alducros in 2015, and by Brett and Mueller and Navarra in 1997. Hence, diatoms have a competitive advantage when there is sufficient silica available. Often misunderstood, but one of the greatest carbon fixating mechanisms, photosynthesizing CO2 into O2, even more than all the rainforests combined. They survive on sunlight and nutrient and silica-rich waters, and they need to do photosynthesis. Diatoms are responsible for about 20% of the oxygen we breathe. Diatoms should also be considered one of our planet's strongest immune systems, like the forests on our planet. They sequester CO2 on land, the forest. The diatoms, often referred to as forests of the ocean, do the same along the continental shelves of our oceans and along the shorelines in our lakes, bogs, and they've even been found to exist on water birds. Healthy populations of diatoms depend on nutrient and silica-rich waters and can fixate up to 25% of the world's CO2. But as NASA pointed out in study 11934, we are losing 1% of population of diatoms since 1998. We believe that dam-impounded rivers prevent the strong spring freshet energy and nutrient pulses that are essential for nutrients and silica to be upwelled from deeper waters to the shallow waters along the continental shelves, where diatom populations reside. The mineral calcium carbonate, the key building block of shells and skeletons of many marine organisms, depend on these nutrients. However, excesses of CO2 in the atmosphere ends up in the oceans, reacting with water to form carbonic acid. This acid lowers the availability of carbonate ions for calcium carbonate to form, decreasing the quantity of soluble calcium carbonate, preventing coral reefs and shellfish from building effective structures. This ongoing decrease of calcium carbonate in solution during the 21st century may be a greater change than possibly at any time in the last 300 million years. With CO2 levels in the atmosphere increasing and populations of diatoms decreasing for lack of adequate nutrients, this is a strong indication that shell-bearing marine life will be decreasing and may be disappearing, as calcium carbonate will be in short supply. And you have seen some beautiful pictures. That one file up there of the single cell diatom, which is magnified 400 times, that's what they look like up close. Okay. File 15.
I don't see a screen sharing. There's no slide up right now. Hasn't been for a bit. Just to let you know.
For how long? How long? Halsey?
Yes,
Oh,
sorry, having some technical difficulty.
hmm. How
Try
far?
this. How about now?
Not yet. There we go.
Now you got it.
What
Okay.
slide are you on, Halsey?
15.
Okay. Okay. Our Earth is similar to a living being. Our biological systems seem to exist on a planetary scale. The human race has talked about the Gaia principle. Indigenous peoples experienced our planet as a living being. Earth's complexity is not so different than most animals. As a matter of fact, if you look closely, our planet shares similar biological functional systems. And why should we look and come to respect this reality? Of course, on a planetary level, all systems are supersized. Let's think about the possible functional systems of our planet. I will suggest that the oceans serve as the Earth's heart. And with a cardiovascular interconnectedness with the main rivers of the planet, which in turn provide blood flow and are the main nutrient delivery system coming from the terrestrial areas, the land or physical body, which also provides food, clothing, and a home for all life on land, water, and sky. The lungs of the planet, its respiratory system, is our atmosphere, our air. The metabolic and digestive systems are under our feet, the dirt, the ground we walk on, and often in the air we breathe. Decomposition leads to more fertile ground and more growth, and the cycle continues. Rivers are like the coronary arteries of a human being, carrying essential nutrients to our oceans and marine life. Just as the circulatory system carries essential nutrients throughout our bodies, blockages in the human body can create grave illness. Damming the rivers of our Earth creates blockages that cause serious problems for the entire planet. Our planet now has a fever. We all know about climate heating. Dams have interrupted centuries-old hydrological flow cycles. This has biogeochemically transformed the oceans. The planet is no longer capable of providing enough essential nutrients to support some of its natural immune systems. And starvation, with decreases of diatom phytoplankton forests along the oceans, continental shelf, and excuse me, hello? What's going on? And starvation with decreases of diatomic plankton forests along the continental shelves, along with the negative impacts of what remains of our land forests, now presents a major problem for sequestering CO2. This is altering life and climate as we have come to know on our planet. Hans New, one of the most prolific researchers and head of oceanography at the Bedford Institute in Nova Scotia from the 1960s to the 80s, said, even if there were no scientific proof available to verify the danger of such damming modifications, logic alone would show that seasonal regulation forced onto river flow ignores the natural consequences of freshwater discharges. Mr. New's extensive experience on freshwater rivers and their interactions with tidal waters and estuaries is far superior to any research we've found yet. Hans New's work is the basis for Stephen Kasperzak's book, Arctic Blue Desert. And this is the work that has led us to even further discoveries about the ravaging impacts caused by large volumes of impounded water and unnatural human-forced regulated flows. Our next webinar will highlight news work. Thank you. We are open for questions. We're open for questions
Or comments.
or comments.
My apologies for the technical difficulties with the slideshow. It was not working out as I thought it would. So
No, it's Elizabeth. I really appreciate this. You know, one of the sorrows of my life is what we've done to our rivers. Canada has some of the most majestic rivers in the world, and we have done it in full view of everyone, and not given a hoot. I'm not talking about me personally. I saw what had happened to my father in the Burns Lake area, where they it was a first dam on the piece, and everybody fought it against the world. There was princes from all over the world. They said, no, 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 you can't do this, you can't. But the BC government did it. And now they have 3 dams on it. And the last one, there was so much controversy, but it went ahead. And it's basically supplying the United States with electricity or maybe a whole bunch of water. But that water is not going to be good water, like you just explained. And it makes total sense to me, because when I was a child, I saw the Bennett Dam. And when I saw that, I said, to me, it was like a horrible thing, because it was so unnatural, so massive, right? Like, I was used to seeing fish in the lakes and in the rivers. I lived in northern BC when I was very, very small. And I had that in my mind. And when I saw it, and my dad had to hold me, I was so frightened, because it was completely unnatural. And people go to look at a dam, and all you're looking at is a dead body of water. That's all. There's nothing there of value except a bunch of water. And now we know it's not even healthy to drink. And I hate hearing about, because it just breaks my heart. I can't even integrate it into my life at all. We are such criminals in this country. We have not been woken up to that we need water, and everybody wants our water. But in the end of it, our water's going to be no good. And it's all a plan. It's all a plan. It's not a conspiracy. It's all been planned long before you and I even thought about it. It breaks my heart. That's all I can say. So I'm so good.
thank you.
Thank you, Roberta, for letting me know this, because, yeah.
Okay, Roberta.
Yeah, I just want to say, thanks, Elizabeth. I'm glad you got on. Thanks, Cliff. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. And my comment is to Elizabeth and anyone else that will listen, is that this is our job. It's our job to make sure people don't realize just the intricacies of diatoms and micro this and micro that, and then macro this and macro that. And we need, we're not the scientists here, but we read, and we need to get this message out to as many people as possible, because I guarantee you the powers that be will never. They know the Hydro-Quebec engineers and the BC hydro engineers, they all know this. They know. They've covered it up for many years, and it's up to us to get this message out. So as a member of NCAPA and the Council of Canadians, Elizabeth, I have so many hats. Sometimes I wonder how many times I can change hats in one day. But it's up to us. We have to get this message out, and this is the way to do it. This, just keep bringing people in, new people here, and 1 or 2 people there, and getting the message out that that this is, like Cliff said, and I love that last part, Cliff, about how the body of a human being is so like the body of Mother Earth, and how Mother Earth is crying out with pain, and the reference to it having a fever, I love that too. I think that's an excellent analogy, and I really appreciate that you brought that down. Thank you.
Yeah. One thing
So-
we have to keep in mind that's important is that those rivers up there no longer exist.
No.
There's water there that's dammed and impounded year round. And the fact that they are continually to melt permafrost and heat that area is going to increase the amount of warmer fresh water going into the Arctic Ocean
Mhm.
on a yearly basis. I mean, this is very serious, as Roberta said, and as your friend said, I can't remember, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, yeah.
This is criminal. It's just like the fossil fuel industry running wild, but at least, at least they're noting it now. Everybody publicly is noting that we're not even seeing people note it yet about the dams. So they're just barely scratching the surface now.
Mhm.
That's why we're educating.
Okay, Bill's got his hand up. Bill Weber.
Yeah, can I bring the discussion back to Maine?
Sure.
So Maine has an energy plan, and that energy plan, going out into 2040 and 2050, places a lot of emphasis on offshore wind, as well. I'm assuming it still has a large component of hydro.
Yeah.
And one issue that I've brought up numerous times to the governor's energy office is that I think the plan has a major fault. And that fault is that it does not provide any contingency plan for any of these sources not coming through. For instance, offshore wind, Maine is not going to control that market. So we are definitely at the risk of the Europeans, of what goes on, of Donald Trump. And so what I've been pushing is the governor's energy office is they need to have a contingency plan and then do some risk management, which would feed into the contingency plan, that if something's like this happens, this is our backup. And who would think that a contingency that we should have is Canada shutting off electricity to the States? That is a mind-boggling contingency that I think the governor's energy office needs to look into.
Exactly.
And so I think that's something we're going to have Burgess on a coffee and climate call this Friday.
You're
I'm going to
talking
bring
about
that.
Dan Burgess, the head of the governor's energy office?
Yeah, Dan Burgess.
Okay.
He's going to be giving a presentation on the Maine climate plan to Portland Coffee and Climate. So if anybody wants to join that and say, hey, look, you've got a problem here, we could lose our hydro. The idea is that we need to build in capacity over and above these so-called clean energy. If offshore wind or hydro falls aside, there's going to be somebody there pushing nuclear.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So we need to have an overabundance. We need to be going over to an overabundance. I think that's a lot more solar than some of these. Some of these more innovative technologies like offshore wind. I think offshore wind, going out into the future is going to be the answer, but it's going to be a rocky road. And I'd hate to think that if it fails, we're going to lose a lot of credibility. So we do need a contingency plan, and I'll forward to you, Halsey and Cliff,
Thank you.
the link for Friday's meeting at 9.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you could put it in the chat, Bill,
All right.
everybody could see it then.
Okay, I'll
Will the
attempt to-
chat
Roberta.
be saved?
I can save the chat, sure.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I'll also email it. Where the
Other
heck-
comments or questions? Sorry, some of you came in late, but we will have a recording and we can make Cliff's slides available to people who are here if you would like to have those to look at.
Yeah.
I think that Cliff certainly touched on a lot of the major points that most people tend not to be aware of in regards to the effects of dams. And in fact, I just want to mention last Sunday in the Maine Sunday Telegram, there was a huge article about the decline of the fisheries
Hmm.
in Maine and the Gulf of Maine. And I did contact the author of that article to invite her to be here. I had a brief conversation with her on the phone because in the article it mentions 3 or 4 or 5 different factors that they say are going into the decline of the fisheries. No mention of the dams at
No,
all
no,
because it's just not in people's awareness
right.
that the dams are affecting the rivers and the rivers are affecting the oceans, and how they are affecting it is not only through the heat pollution, but through the withholding of the nutrients that the oceanic food chain relies on.
Exactly.
So that's I think a major piece that Cliff pointed out, particularly focusing on the diatoms that, we need to be repeating over and over and in whatever venues we can, because when you look at the number of impacts that major dams on the rivers have and the number of rivers that have been dammed, they far outweigh, I think, the one benefit that we get from the dams, which is electricity.
I want
So,
to introduce one more item.
yeah.
Worldwide, by 2030, almost 90% of the world's rivers, the major ones that flow into the ocean, will be fragmented and dammed.
Mhm.
And that's going to increase the starvation rates of marine life. It's going to reduce the fishery population, and it's going to reduce the key forests in the ocean, the phytoplankton diatoms. And now, without those forests in the ocean, we are really up the creek without a paddle.
Mhm.
Because they serve the same function as the forests and the land do.
Mhm.
But the oceans are take up a lot more of the earth than the forests do. And so think about how many more diatoms there are in phytoplankton to deal with CO2 that might not be there by 2030, the
Mhm.
rate we're going. It's
Yeah.
a real serious problem.
Right. I'm going to call on Roberta in just a moment, but before I forget, I just wanted to remind everyone that Friday, which is the day, and Bill Weber has put the link in the chat for this meeting. Friday is the International Day of Action for Rivers.
Right.
So think about going to a river close to you and doing something nice for the river, and think about spreading the word to whomever you can about what's going on. Friday's a great way to do it. Yep. Go ahead, Roberta.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Bill and to anyone else that cares to listen to me, I keep talking these things and have been for many years, but one of the things that we hardly ever discuss as Canadians and Americans, we need to conserve. My God, we use up more power than any other country in the world. Even the Europeans don't use as much as us. And how that's one of the things we need to preach, is that these 6,000 and 7,000 square foot homes and these F-250s and F-350s that are spewing CO2 into the atmosphere as they drive along. I mean, we need to tell our politicians the policies have to change, man. We're not going to change it ourselves. We need government policies to stop us from using so much energy. And maybe then we won't have to dam the last few rivers that are left on Earth. And I say that because my river is about to probably get another dam called Gull Island from an MOU that was just signed between Hydro-Quebec and Newfoundland Labrador Hydro.
MOU's Memorandum of Understanding.
Yes.
So that
yes.
becomes a legal document?
It will become, it's not legal, it's as legal can get. All it is an agreement to make an agreement. The agreements will come behind closed doors. The details are not in that MOU, just the general idea of what they plan to do. It's the devil is in the details, and I've had a person who's been involved with us quite a lot since like 2009 has written a document that isn't ready for publication yet that looks at that MOU and explains why there are so many discrepancies in it that could end up if the powers that be at Hydro-Quebec and Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro continue down the path that they're going, we are all going to be in big trouble in Newfoundland and Labrador as far as our rates go. And this power, an extra 3,000 megawatts or some such, is all being built to send power to the United States.
Yeah.
You didn't see Hydro-Quebec jump on the bandwagon and say, oh, we'll put a 25% tariff on our power, or we'll shut off the New York and Massachusetts. No way, because they're too greedy. That's not going to happen. And you saw that Doug Ford backed up. He backed up so fast, I'm sure he ran into himself because they don't want to lose that money. But in the same vein, we can't lose another part of the river. We can't use another part of the river.
Yeah. So, and this is going to be the subject of our third webinar in this series in May, which Roberta will be going into detail about with some other colleagues who will be presenting with her.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody have any other questions? Feel free. Okay.
Right. Okay, so our next webinar is in actually about a little more than a month from now. I think it's 5 weeks. It's going to be April 23rd, and our colleague Roger Wheeler, who is the president of Friends of Sebago, will be giving us a background and summary of the work of Hans Noy, who is the oceanographer that Cliff referred to that worked at the Bedford Institute in Nova Scotia, and how his work was like the sounding bell for what would come about from the mega dams that were being built in Canada. And Roger is calling his presentation The Three Warnings of Hans Noy, and he's going to go into detail what those warnings were, which have all come true. And so I guess we're going to take a deep dive into that in April. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to everyone for coming today, and I hope that